Hi, it's Mrs. Ocasio. Welcome back. Today we're going to make a little longer video. Okay, this one is going to be about wake up. You're not stuck. You're just in survival mode. So first of all, I want to say there comes a point in life where life doesn't feel wrong. It just doesn't feel fully right anymore. Where you're still functioning, you're still showing up, but you're still doing whatever needs to be done, but something just feels different. It feels heavier, it feels quieter. It feels less like living and more like you're just getting by. You're saying things like, oh my God, I'm just so tired. Or I just need to be more disciplined. Or maybe you say something like, I should be doing better than this, like your expectations you have for yourself are not being fulfilled. You feel like you should be doing better. And I just want to let you know it's not that you're failing at life and you're just in survival mode. So sometimes this is what survival mode actually feels like. You might find yourself saying everything feels like so much effort. Simple tasks feel heavier than they used to. Just getting dressed, getting the shower, getting through your day just seems so much more cumbersome than what it used to. And you have a constant sense of, I'm going to catch up later. I'm behind now, or I'm going to catch up. And you might feel like an emotional flatness, or just like you're exhausted, you're overwhelmed all the time, and there's no in between. You're either having like no effort that you can put into it, or you're feeling totally overwhelmed. There's no in between scene. And because you're still functioning, you don't always name it as something important. You're like, I'm still getting through it. I'm still getting my things done. But then it just keeps on going on. But internally, something in you is asking for you to give this feeling in yourself some attention. All right. Something is going to cause you to kind of look at that feeling and see it for what it really is. Let me tell you what that is. Okay, so you could feel like I must be lazy, or I'm just unmotivated, or I just need to try harder at this. But that's just an adaptive state. It's what happens when your system has been carrying too much for too long, emotionally, mentally, or even relationship wise. It is not weakness, it's your protective systems in your body, in your emotions, and in your spiritual state, kind of protecting you because you're in survival mode. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. Survival mode is probably something you had before that protects you in a lot of ways, and it's in your memory system. And so because you remember it, it's something that you constantly go back to as far as like a coping mechanism. So the next thing I'm talking about is 3 different realizations that you might have when you're in this mode. The first one would be, why does everything feel like such big effort now? Okay. Or you might say, I really don't feel like myself lately. You might feel kind of like you're out of your body, or everything is kind of foreign to you. And then you say, even things I used to enjoy, they just don't feel the same. Those are 3 things that could come to you as you have this realization that you're in survival mode. Not everybody gets it, but the 3 things I mentioned are actually very common. The next thing that could happen, as you progress in this thing, is that you might feel that the expectations that other people have of you, or that you have of yourself, they just don't longer fit you anymore. And you have a quiet pull towards doing something different. You might not exactly know what that different is, and you might still try to clarify that. But instead of this being a problem, you should view it as actually a signal. All right, something is trying to tell you something. You're not always meant to stay the same version of yourself forever. All right, we're constantly changing human beings. When we outgrow something, sometimes it's not quite dramatic. It's actually a slower process, and it shows up as discomfort. And this discomfort shows up before it becomes clarity. So it's there before we might actually realize it. Okay, the next thing I want to talk to you about is the point where you're waking up to realization that you're in surviving mode and that you want to change your life and you want to live more intentionally. Sometimes something happens to you and it's not quite inspiring, I'm sorry. It is actually that you're thinking about that you're not living up to other people's expectations, and that's okay. You're maybe not feeling what you thought you should feel, and you're living an experience that's not representing yourself. And that's the part of you that already knows that something needs to shift. Not everything, but just some things. And it's not going to be your whole life overnight, but you realize that some changes are needed. This realization is kind of when you're at the waking up point in your life. I want to talk about where this leads. This getting to the point of waking up, where this leads. So the waking up part is not like about going along and revamping your life and fixing everything and changing everything. It's more about having clarity and seeing things more clearly. And because you can see clearly, you also can't unsee your vision. You know how I was talking about how you might be at the point where you're thinking about yourself doing something else, or you're thinking about change. Maybe you're daydreaming and imagining yourself in a different place, doing something different than what you're doing now. You can't totally unsee that. But for now, you don't have to rush into that change. It's okay to just notice, because awareness is where intentional living begins. Okay, so now we're talking about actually going from the survival mode into intentional living. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe this video, because what comes after this is a series of smaller videos that talks about going from survival mode into intentional living. And then after that, we'll follow it up with some more longer video on intentional living in about a week or so. So please subscribe and like and join us for our next video. Have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed our discussion.